there are a number of groups out there on the right who are engaged in the election and helping. One of those is Heritage Action for America. And they're actually rolling out Fight for America. It's a new grassroots initiative. They're going to work on the swing states. And interestingly enough, they're going to make police a big issue and standing for the police. They're going to launch this with the Vice President of the United States. And joining me is Jessica Anderson, the Executive Director of Heritage Action. How are you?
Hi, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us about going to Iowa with the Vice President on this. Sounds like a big deal.
Yes, we were in Iowa on Thursday of last week launching this campaign called Fight for America, which basically is going to take the fight back to the liberal left, who, as we know, is right now seeking to defund our police. They're attacking our brave law enforcement officers. And so we want to stand up against that and show that this administration, conservatives across the country, and actually the average swing voter all agree that we need to support the police and we need to return safety and security to our streets and neighborhoods. It's a pretty simple message, and it's crazy that in 2020 we have to actually make this point.
Yeah, it is. And my apologies. I had written my note that it was happening this week, so it was last week, and now I see the press release that it did do this. You know, you and I have both been around in politics for some time, and it is crazy that in 2020 we're actually having to defend the police as an institution, and we're also watching progressives for the first time in memory want to actually defund a union, that being the police union.
You know, it really is wild, Eric, and I think what's happening is that as the mob rule and the anarchy that's just being spurred from the left right now, as that just is completely unchecked, the police have really gotten caught in the crosshairs, and they have become basically a straw bag that the left is just pounding upon. And so we want to flip that on its head and say, look, a lawful society isn't possible without law enforcement. And they've chosen a noble profession. This is the thin blue line that protects you and me. It protects our families. It provides safety and security. They should be praised, not admonished. And that's the exact message that the Vice President gave to the 50 law enforcement officers that we had with us in Des Moines last week. And that's the heart behind our police pledge that I'm excited to announce with you today that we're launching, which will put elected officials at all levels of government, state, local, and federal, on the record on whether or not they will support the police and stand against any effort to defund law enforcement.
Yeah, now that's going to be fun to watch this nuancing, particularly given the left's willingness to just devour people these days for not supporting defunding the police. So are you launching this? Is it nationwide or particularly in swing states?
So the police pledge itself is nationwide, and you're right. I mean, the left tiptoes on this, right? Kamala Harris says we're going to reimagine public safety. Biden says he wants to redirect funds away from the police. AOC, she just comes out and says it, defund the police, period. I mean, she doesn't tiptoe around anything. And so the police pledge is going to put these members, put these elected officials at all levels on the record. Do they or do they not support safety and security? Will they or will they not support bills, resolutions, or movements to defund the police? And we're going to work, locally all the way up to the federal level with the hopes that we get mayors, governors, senators, and members of Congress all on the record coming out against the defund the police movement. I mean, it really is a very interesting time that we even have to say this, but it's required, and it's what the conservative right should be doing right now to stand up against the lawlessness.
Well, I want to pivot just a little bit because I know you guys, going all the way back to the founding of Heritage Action, have done a lot of grassroots advocacy, training, and door-to-door. And this year, I mean, with the virus, it's hard to go door-to-door. But if I recall reading in the last week or so, you guys are doing some door-to-door canvassing, but also a lot of phone banking. Is that right?
That's right. So what we did is on April 1st, we launched what we call Project 2020. And basically this is our effort to take the grassroots and engage directly with swing voters. And so we're doing this in Iowa, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And so far since April 1st, we've talked to just over 2.5 million swing voters on policy issues. So things like economic recovery, supporting law enforcement, legal immigration reform, securing the border, cutting taxes, the policy issues that we know drive these swing voters. And as we talk to them, we then encourage them to vote conservative this November. We register them if someone's not registered in the household. And then now that COVID has allowed us to go door to door and open up in some states, we've been able to actually start knocking on households the last 2 weeks. But our goal is to reach 4 million swing voters spread out amongst these battleground states. And in particular, not only are we engaging with them on the issues, but we're trying to convert them, right? We want them to come into the movement long term because we know that our policy solutions are better than the left's alternative. And so it's not just about November, it's about the long-term plan to grow the conservative movement and make a home for these swing voters on the policy issues within the conservative grassroots.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, honestly, because it seems like so many people they're just focusing on this election and the president. And it seems like every couple of years we've got to rebuild a grassroots base because we make it so much about the person instead of the ideas. It's just nice to know that there's a group out there making it about the ideas instead of the person.
That's right. And honestly, Eric, it's one of the things I find the most frustrating is the day after the election, I love the party, but the party picks up and leaves. And we just can't operate like that. We need to have long-term relationships at the most local grassroots level, and we need to be present, winning converts year after year after year, not just turning on the lights on even number years. And that's what Heritage Action is focused on. And we're going to do this long after the election, and this will just be part of our toolbox. As you come to expect Heritage Action for our legislative scorecard, expect this grassroots level work at the ground game that allows us to work with these swing voters, bring them in, and then turn them into, accountability warriors as we work with members of Congress once they're in office.
That's fantastic. Now, let me ask you, lay of the land wise, you look at a lot of the polling out there, and nationally the polling looks terrible, but you look into these swing states, one of the things that stands out to me is that while some swing state voters, particularly suburban women, don't particularly care for the president, the Republican brand actually doesn't do bad, and the conservative label actually outperforms the progressive label still in a lot of these places. And I'm wondering how you translate that into knocking on doors and encouraging people to get out and vote on policy.
Well, what we're finding is that if you actually talk to the swing voter about the policy and you put aside the personalities of President Trump or candidate Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, if you just focus on the policy, we actually can win them over. And so our door knockers, they talk about the economic recovery needed for COVID-19. Who do you trust the most to provide that economic recovery, and what does that actually look like amidst, a lot of tumult going on? When you look at an issue like supporting the police, we have a new poll out today that specifically is asking these swing voters in these battleground states, what do you think about the movement to significantly cut funding for police departments across the country, which, as we call it, is just the defund the police movement. 79% are opposed to that compared to only 16% of these swing voters. And so, swing voters matter because they're usually more in tune with the policy issues themselves, and we can persuade them on these things if we stick to the issues. And, I think the police inflection point is important. The responses to COVID-19 are obviously important. And the larger conversation around the economy, that is a strength for President Trump. In battleground states, it's proving to be a, +2 net job approval, and it ties back to his overall numbers. But the message has to be about things that are specific to the swing voter: economic recovery, safety and security, quelling the violence, having wage satisfaction. You make it about those policy issues, then we've got the chance to win them over and keep them as part of the conservative movement long term.
Now, if people want to get involved, if they want to find out more, what should they do?
Well, first thing I would say is they themselves should check out the Police Pledge. It's located at policepledge.com. We're asking the grassroots to sign it, as well as asking all elected officials at really all levels of government. And so I would love everyone's help. Ask your member of Congress, ask your mayor, ask your governor, ask the candidates that are running for House seats if they'll sign it, policepledge.com. And then, of course, heritageaction.com has all of our information about the ground game. And if you're interested in going door to door with us, we'd love the help. It's the last 80 days. We can't leave anything, left on the field. This is truly the final march, and it's important that we get out the votes and we do all that we can heading into November and beyond.
I just signed it, policepledge.com.
Hey.
I'm pushing it out on Twitter so people can go to my Twitter feed, find the link. They can do it as well, or go to policepledge.com. And listen, thank you so much for stopping by and talking about this. Good luck out there. I'm glad to see you guys engage with the swing states on this issue.
You got it. Thanks, Eric, for having me. Talk soon.
Absolutely. Jessica Anderson, she's the Executive Director of Heritage Action for America. Again, if you go to the website, policepledge.com, you can sign this. You can also learn more about Heritage Action for America. You can also get a Back the Blue yard sign for your yard if that's something you're interested in. And frankly, they're going to be targeting Georgia because Georgia is a swing state this year.